Hello, everyone, and welcome into CrushTheStreet.com. I got a real treat for everyone today. I got Marc Faber on the line. Brilliant contrarian investor. He's lived all over the world. He publishes the Gloom, Boom, and Doom report. Marc, thanks for coming on the line with me today at Crush the Street.
It's my pleasure.
Marc, mainstream news outlets are reacting to your comments on white people populating America. And really, I want to get into the economy here and talk to us about, really what we can do with our finances. But I want to give you an opportunity to respond to what's been going on here.
Yes. Well, I think that a relatively insignificant paragraph in something like 20-page report has caused a huge elephant. And I always ask myself, well, why did it happen? Who knows? But I don't think it's entirely by accident. Now, the thing is this. First of all, it's very kind of you to call me, because some other people have said they wouldn't call me and interview me anymore because I'm a racist. I don't think I'm a racist, but I have stated some historical facts. And among them, and I give you an example, I stated that the Southerners defended what their beliefs were. They may have been wrong, but the Southerners were also honorable people. You can't say the Northerners were all good and the Southerners were all bad. And the Southerners defended a custom that has been in existence for more than 5,000 years of human history, and this was slavery. And we had slavery in the US, as you know, at the time, and we had slavery in many other countries until the 20th century. And I'd say even today, in some societies, there's still some slavery. So they defended something that had been in place for a very long time. Now, some people said, well, Marc is defending slavery and advocating slavery. Well, I think that's a misquote. I'm just stating a historical fact. I'm also stating the historical fact that the whites came to America. They were very cruel in some cases. We know what they did with the Indians and so forth. But nevertheless, they brought technology, skills, and hard work, and Christian ethics of, say, reliability, punctuality, and hard work, wisdom. And I don't think that the US would have become this prosperous until the 50s and 60s, that is, because in the last, say, 20, 30 years, the US GDP per capita in real terms has hardly increased, except for the super rich. But nevertheless, the US had an incredible place in the sun for a long time. That this would have happened if an other ethnic group had gone to the US. And we have many books that are written about how the West grew rich and how the West developed. And we have indications that, say, in 1780, India's GDP and Chinese GDP was, say, something like 60% of world's GDP. And then the Western GDP increased dramatically to, say, over 80%, and now it's going down again. But I'm just explaining that it's not all because the white man brought along slaves and enslaved people, and because of the colonization and of the imperialism. I'm not saying that the colonization and the imperialism was fair and just, but what I'm saying is that in many societies, when the white man left or were kicked out, conditions actually deteriorated.
Mark,
so I'm not sure that this is a racist comment.
I wouldn't think
historical fact.
Go ahead, please.
I'm just stating a historical fact. I'm not saying it's good, and I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying this is the way it was.
Sure. Yeah, we live in a world where it's hard to say something positive about whites or Europeans or Western culture because it goes straight to white supremacy. But I wouldn't think twice about saying something like, oh, the white man enslaving African Americans in the early 1800s was bad because, that's, everyone accepts that. But no one wants to hear about how poorly Native Americans were to each other in many cases, massacring each other and cannibalism and the rituals and things that they were doing to each other. But it's all this hatred towards, the white people. And I just don't know how it's evolved to that, because really it's a human nature thing. We have this tendency to do the same things. Whoever's in power would have likely done the same things that the white settlers did, but they're getting hurt.
Maybe even worse. Who knows?
I heard a quote a while back, and someone told me this. He said, "The truth is never malignant or benign. It's just the truth." And I just want to ask you then, Mark, what type of world are we living in where we can't talk about the facts?
Yes, this I also wonder. I think it will change again in future, but before it changes, it may get worse. The fact is simply that I've traveled to communist and socialist countries since the late 60s, and I've seen their systems with a controlled press. There was no freedom of the press, and people were afraid to speak openly about their daily lives and what they thought, because the freedom of expression was also suppressed. And some books were banned, and dissidents who had a different view, they were all in jail or had been killed off, including some scientists and including some scholars. And this still happens today in some countries in the world, where people who are dissidents, who have a different views, they are essentially put in jail. We are well aware of these countries. And I think we have to be very careful in a free society that we don't accuse people who have a different view of, this is a very easy thing to say, he's a racist, or he's a bigot, that's a bigot, or he's a chauvinist, and so forth. These are expressions that are very difficult to prove and substantiate. I mean, in the Middle Ages, or early Middle Ages, we had the witch hunt, and you know how it looked like. And we had the Inquisition. So if someone had a different view that didn't suit the Catholic Church, he was brought before the Inquisition. And then he was tested and so forth. and usually the outcome wasn't very favorable. And I think we have to be careful not to go back to this system.
Sure. No, I think you're absolutely right. I wouldn't think twice about saying something positive about the Chinese moving into California and all the money that they're bringing in, purchasing the real estate and how that's circling the economy, and how Asians have a good work ethic in general, and that many of their practices are good for society. But you couldn't really say those same things about white people without getting a weird look nowadays. The stigma. That's not politically correct to acknowledge certain things. So
I have to laugh sometimes. I mean, I admit the white man, and Sam Huntington wrote about it, has also achieved his wealth through cruelty. That we have to accept. But the question is whether the others would have been any different. That is the question. And nowadays, I can tell you, and people talk very badly about colonialism and so forth, but I can say that in many countries, it might be good to still have colonies, because the colonial system today would be very different than, say, 150 years ago. But I don't want to go into details about all this, because, whatever I will say, people will label me now as a racist.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. It's amazing how you have to fit in a certain box nowadays to be accepted
Yes.
in any sort of public forum or arena.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It was, as I was on the board of several companies, there was a form, self-assessment form. They just had to fill in boxes, and then it went to the rating agencies and to the consultants, and they would then tick off, are you okay and suitable to be a board member or not? And this is all nowadays handled this way.
Wow. All right, Mark. Well, let's talk about the economy here a little bit. The stock markets keep hitting high after new high, all-time highs here. And it's easy for a guy like me to say central bankers have lost control. But so far, I guess to some degree, they've kept this historic bull run in equities afloat now for going on 8 years or so. And I guess my question to you is, are they, central bankers I mean, more in control than it would appear?
Let's put it this way. I think that if there is a coordinated effort around the world to increase central banks' balance sheets, in other words, it means the central bank goes into the free market and buys bonds and depresses bond yields, and so money flows into the system. It may not flow into the real economy, but it flows into asset markets. And so asset markets go up substantially, different asset markets at different times. But it's interesting that the markets have gone up dramatically. Now, if you would look at the real economy, real GDP per capita and so forth, and affordability of assets, you would find that a lot of households find it very difficult to buy a house because the house is kind of too expensive relative to their incomes. This is also the case of millennials, and we have precise statistics about the wealth of millennials compared to their parents when they were 35 years old, and their income compared to their parents' income when they were 35 years old. in real terms, inflation is just, the fact is simply that it's way down. And so it's boosted the incomes and the wealth of a very narrow group of people. The not even 1%, the 0.01%, they have become extremely rich. And in that respect, the Federal Reserve has, and other central banks, they have been very successful. But in terms of really, how do you measure economic success? Measure economic success essentially by the standards of people going up. And this really hasn't happened, period. And so the success of the money printing has been limited. Now the question is, asset prices, whether it's real estate, bonds, stocks, everything is very elevated. Now, can it go down or will it go up more? It can go up more if the central banks increase their balance sheets. That I admit. But there will be a point when the increase in the balance sheet has, unless it's huge and at an increasing rate, will have a very limited impact. And we can see this already today. The Federal Reserve over the last 2 years hasn't increased the balance sheets of its central bank, so the dollar weakened for a while. Recently it's strengthened, and the assets in foreign markets have performed better. In other words, you look at, say, Italy. The stock market in dollar terms is up 30%. The S&P is up 15%. And you look at Asia. Every market in Asia has outperformed the US, with the exception of Jakarta and Pakistan. But the other markets have outperformed the US. And so the money flows, but we don't know exactly where it flows. When we measure the increase in financial asset prices compared to bitcoins, everything has collapsed. And this is actually quite interesting, that the money that the Fed has kind of printed has flown into a new currency. Now, I'm not saying that bitcoins will go up or will go down. I'm just saying it's gone into a new asset class, which was certainly not the intention of the Federal Reserve. And the academics at Harvard, they were writing books about going to paperless money, and that the Fed could then introduce negative interest rates of, say, 3-5% negative interest rates. It's happened, but not by central banks, but by the free market. And they were talking about cash being used by drug dealers and so forth. I don't think that a lot of money is being laundered by bitcoins and other cryptocurrencies. But these are currencies that are outside essentially the control of central banks for the time being. That may change, but for the time being.
Sure.
And so we have a very peculiar situation.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Mark.
Will the market go up or down? As I said, to make a forecast about this is very difficult because we don't know how much more money the central banks will print, how much more fiscal stimulus they will inject into the economy. What we know is that the debt level today, globally, is at the highest level ever and about 50% higher than it was in 2007 when the last crisis happened. So I think that the whole exercise with fiscal and monetary expansion will end badly. But will it end badly tomorrow or in 3 months or 6 months? I don't know. But it will end very badly.
Right. Yeah, it goes back to what you were talking about, what we were talking about. The people in power tend to do what's best for them. And that's how we even started our conversation off.
Yes.
And now we have the 1% of the 1% benefiting from central bank balance sheet expansion.
Yes.
And it's just perpetuating on top of itself. And you brought up cryptocurrency. It really seems like Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies is that thing. It's that thing that central bankers can't control, and it's something that the average person can use. There's no entry to barrier to get into cryptocurrency, and I think it's a very powerful thing to sidestep a lot of the manipulative actions that governments have taken to sustain the current system. And so any other thoughts that you have when it comes to cryptocurrency, because I really wanted to touch on that because I think it's such an incredible technological advancement integrated with the financial sector. And I guess, have you seen anything else that you can compare to what we're seeing right now with cryptocurrency in your history of investing that this reminds you of?
Well, I've seen many bubbles in my life, and bubbles involve usually something where the future profits are highly uncertain, so the imagination can run wild. Like when people buy Tesla, they think that Tesla will dominate the electric-powered cars. But that is far from certain. Netscape and Yahoo didn't dominate the search engines. Google became a public company, I think, in something like 2006. And the point is simply there are new technologies coming up. Bitcoin, some people who are well informed, they're not stupid, they're wealthy, they research the whole thing. They think that Bitcoins will go to 10,000 or 100,000. I've even seen estimates of 1 million. I just don't know. But I believe cryptocurrencies are here to stay. People will use them in future. Will it be Bitcoins or another cryptocurrency? Who knows? But it shows that the excess liquidity that central banks have created can suddenly flow into something that they didn't intend to boost the value of. Mm. They intended to boost the value of homes, they intended to boost the value of stocks and bonds, in other words, bring interest rates down. That they managed until recently. Now, I happen to think that the bond market, after essentially a bull market since 1981, is coming to an end. Will bonds collapse right away? That I don't know. But it seems to me that the upside is very limited. That's why stocks are doing relatively well, because I give you a better example. Let's say you're sitting in Europe. You can buy an Italian government bond at a yield of 2% for 10 years. In Spain, that yield is 1.64%. And in Portugal, interestingly enough, the yield is 2.27%, whereas in the US, it's today at 2.37%. So you have yields on these bonds that are lower than in the US. Now, I'm not here wanting to make a statement, what is the better value? But I think that over the next 10 years, I rather own the bonds of the US government at the higher yield than Portuguese bonds. But anyway, but sure. The point is, in Switzerland, you have yields that are negative. in Germany, you have yields that are at 0.45%. So someone who has suddenly received money or wants to invest money, he can choose to invest in bonds or in stocks. I think the case is very strong to actually invest in equities rather than in bonds, because I can build you a portfolio of stocks in Europe with a yield of, say, 3 to 4%.
Of course, right. Yeah, and that's I guess that's the goal of even the central bankers. They want us investing in things that putting our money into the economy, whether that's buying assets or stocks or something other than cash, because they don't want us savings, and that is really what is sad. The officials in today's world are discouraging savings, and I just don't know how long we can get away with that, because that is not real fundamental growth. So yeah, any other last thoughts on that? I want to talk to you about the chaos president that many are calling Mr. Trump here in a second, but any other thoughts on that?
Well, I expressed the view before the election that I, on moral and ethical grounds, would never be able to vote for Hillary Clinton. Never. Nor would I vote for a Bush candidate. Although I have to say that Jeb Bush would have been probably the best Bush. He's actually quite a thoughtful character. And to some extent, I actually liked Ted Cruz. But when the election came up between Hillary Clinton and Trump, I argued that I would vote for Trump.
So did I. Yes. And just to clarify, now that we're talking about it, I think it's very sad that since the election, it's been nothing but chaos within the Republican Party, because Trump really went in with the motives to repeal Obamacare, reform taxes, build a wall, and it's just complete discord within the Republican Party and within the entire government when you go to the Republicans and Democrats. So I just wanted to clear that up, because I know I called him the chaos president, but I too voted for Donald Trump with some slight hope.
Yes, and we have to give him some time. He's not a great intellect, that we have to say. But he's surrounded by some decent people. Kelly, Mattis, and the Treasury is, okay, maybe unfortunate that there are so many ex-Goldman Sachs partners in the administration, but some people would argue, well, that's very good. Anyway, but the issue is really that the media and, as you said, the Republican Party and the Democrats anyway have been strongly opposing him, whatever he does. He's whatever, an evil character or so. And I admire him that he had to take so much criticism by everyone. I'm surprised he can still sleep. But I think maybe it will work out. I don't think the tax cuts or the repeal of Obamacare will yield the results that people expected. Some parts of the tax system will stay in place. I would go to a tax reform that essentially creates flat income tax for everyone and no more. In Hong Kong, it takes me like 15 minutes to fill out my tax returns every year.
Oh my gosh.
Because it's a simple system. But that is something the US doesn't want.
And why is that? Why does the US not want a simple system?
I beg your pardon? You just pay 15% of your income. And And more than that, you don't have to fill out. You just have to declare your income. You pay the 15%, and that's it. No deductions.
Wow. Well, that's powerful. All right, Marc. Well, we're getting up on the 30-minute mark here for the call. I've greatly enjoyed this call with you. If you were to give people some general advice, and just some thoughts as to how to, not get wiped out by the system here, with what might be coming on the horizon, what would you suggest?
I think this is very important. I would start out by thinking, we don't know how the world will look like in 5 or 10 years' time. We don't know how much money the central banks will print. Will they abolish paper money altogether? Will there be a wealth tax? And will asset prices not collapse one day? This is a possibility. So I would be diversified. I would own some real estate on low leverage, and I would own equities and bonds and cash and some precious metals. Now you could include some cryptocurrencies. I don't own any cryptocurrencies because I don't know how much value they will have. But I think it's an asset class that will come about and stay. And with this diversification, you're going to suffer also in an asset price collapse, but maybe less than if you're 100% in equities or 100% in bonds. Secondly, I think people should realize it's very important to have an international exposure, to have some money overseas, in custody overseas, and to have some real estate overseas and not just in the US. We don't know how the currencies will behave. Will the dollar be strong or be weak? Of course, everybody has a view, but I can tell you, of all the currency traders I know, nobody has consistently predicted the value of exchange rates. Nobody.
Wow. Well, there you have it, everyone. Marc Faber. Marc, thanks for coming on Crush the Street today. I'm glad you were able to respond to all of the allegations that are going on out there. I hope people give you a chance to talk and to express yourself and to clarify really a very small statement you made out of a very long report. So thanks again for coming on Crush the Street.